Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Marvel Legendary Secret Wars Volume 1. This is the latest expansion for Marvel Legendary, which, if you know anything about my channel, one of my favorite games of all time. And it just keeps getting better and better because they keep pumping out expansions for it. And I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, the Secret Wars set, first off, you notice it's a big box expansion, not a standalone expansion like the villain set was. You still need another one of those two sets, the main set or the villain set, to play with this. But this one, like Dark City, has a ton of cards. I think it's 350 total. And the theme of this one is the Secret Wars, the new Secret Wars. Like, there was old Secret Wars back from like the 80s and 70s or something. But the new Secret Wars that's going on in the Marvel Universe, either right now or just recently ended, has all these different Marvel realities clashing into one another, and only one can survive. And some of the main universe heroes are trying to fix it, and some of the main universe villains are also trying to fix it, but in their own way. So in this set, there's craziness. There's all kinds of different things. There's Marvel zombies facing off against the Days of Future Past X-Men, facing off against Thanos is now a hero, and you have the Age of Apocalypse X-Men, the Ultimate Heroes. All kinds of stuff is going on here. So let me go ahead and give you a, unfortunately, very long look at the cards. I wanted to show as many cards as I possibly could. So it's the overview's very, very long, but if you just want to skip it and go straight to my final thoughts, I wouldn't blame you. That's fine. But let's go ahead and do that. Then I'll tell you what I think. Alright, I'm going to show you as many of the new cards in the Secret Wars Volume 1 set of Legendary as I possibly can. Let's start with the, shall we say, less than exciting things. The game comes with a few new bystanders. Well, only one type of bystander, but it comes with 3 of them. I should mention, however, that the rulebook says you only get 1. So I don't know if I've got, like, extra couple of copies or something like that. But anyways, you have the Banker. What the Banker says, if you don't know, the special bystanders, how they work is that when you capture or rescue one of them, depending on what set you're using, you get the special ability that it has on it. So in this case, when you rescue this bystander, you get +2 recruitment that you can only use to recruit heroes in the headquarters space under the bank, which makes total sense. And if I didn't know better, I would say that's probably a Kickstarter backer. He just looks kind of out of place. Now you have a new stack of cards that you can add right next to the cards like Shield Officer, Madam Hydra, and New Recruit that is always available for purchase. These are called sidekicks, and when you play one, you draw 2 cards. You may return it to the stack in order to draw 2 cards, but you can only buy one of them per turn. If something else lets you gain one, then that breaks the rule, and you can go ahead and you always can purchase at least one. Now we're getting into the heroes, and there are 14, I believe, new heroes in this set, so that's a lot of heroes. Let me show you just a few of the cards from each of them. You have Namor the Submariner. He gets +2 combat, and if you play a fist, you get +2, but only against villains that are on the bridge or the Mastermind. Then you have Feed the Sharks. You can KO one of your cards from your hand or discard pile, and if you do, you draw a card. And his ultimate card is, very simply, you defeat a villain for free. But if you play 2 of these symbols and 2 of these symbols, you also defeat a you can defeat a Mastermind card for free instead, which I think is just really, really cool, actually. Then you have the Superior Iron Man. His cards, as usual, have to do with drawing cards. So if you play that symbol, you get to look at the top cards of your deck. If one of them has a higher cost than the other, you draw it, put the rest back in any order. This one is very simply get 2 combat and draw a card. It's actually not too shabby. And his ultimate card, Humble Brag. Draw a card from each other player who has fewer cards in their victory point pile than you do. Then we're going to go to Old Man Logan. And as I mentioned in my overview or my intro, these are cards from alternate Marvel universes. So Old Man Logan is Wolverine from an alternate universe where like almost all the other Marvel heroes are dead. And he's like the only main one, and he's like on a quest for vengeance. Look it up on Wikipedia; it's kind of interesting. So he's got cards like Loner, which says if you don't recruit any heroes this turn, you get an additional +2 combat. Rage Out. Now this card has the cross-dimensional Hulk Rampage. Or Wolverine Rampage, excuse me. But you'll see this for multiple different cards, including there are Hulk cards in this set that have that instead, as you'll see. And what that means here, in this case, if you play this symbol, you get this cross-dimensional Wolverine Rampage. Every other player has to reveal a Wolverine card either from their hand or from their victory pile. Any card that has Wolverine, or I guess Logan, in one of those piles, and if they don't, they have to take a wound. And if this case, that's always, and in this particular case, if any player gains a wound that way, for each other player, you get an additional combat. Then his ultimate card, No More Heroes. Discard your hand, reveal your hand. If you haven't played any Shield or Hydra officers this turn and you don't have any in your hand, you get an additional +5 combat. Now here's someone I had never heard of before, unless she goes by a different name. This is Proxima Midnight. Here she has. This is an interesting card. If the most recent hero you have played this turn has a recruit icon, you get +2 recruit. If it has a combat icon, you get +2 combat. Then she has General of the Black Order. If she plays this symbol, you get +3 recruit, and that's on top of her 3 combat. Her ultimate card, +4 combat, +4 recruit. If you played that symbol, I think it's a Sonic symbol. I never remember the names of any of these. You get +4 recruit and +4 combat, so that's a pretty awesome card. Then you have another Spider-Man card. This is Ultimate Spider-Man, Miles Morales, I believe, from the Ultimate Universe. And much like all the other Spider-Man cards and all the other sets, he has very, very cheap cards that combo very, very well together, especially with the other Spider-Man cards. So for just 2, you get a card that says reveal the top card of your deck, and if it costs 2 or less, you draw it. If you've played a Fist hero before, you get +2 combat on top of that. This one lets you gain a sidekick, one of those sidekick cards that I showed you. Then you get to reveal the top card of your deck. Again, if it costs 2 or less, you get to draw it. And even his ultimate card only costs you 2. You get +2 combat for each other card you play this turn that costs you 1 or 2. So like I said, they work really, really well with each other. Doctor Strange is in this set. This card only gives you 1, but if you've played one of these, I believe that's like a Mystic symbol already, you may KO a card from your hand or discard pile, and if you do, you get an additional 1, and remember that card only costs 2. Here's a neat one. If you played this hero, you reveal the top card of the villain deck. If it's a villain, you get an additional +2 combat, and you get to fight that villain. Then his ultimate card, the Sorcerer Supreme. Reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, draw any number of cards, and teleport the rest, which I think is pretty darn cool. Then you have Maximus, who's one of the Inhumans, but not the only one in this set. He gives you +2 combat, and this card at least. And whenever you played one of those heroes, whenever you defeat a villain this turn, you gain a sidekick. He takes them over. This one gives you 3 combat, and you may have a Henchman villain from your victory pile enter the city, and if you do, draw a card. So even though they're kind of breaking down the lines in this set of the villains set and the hero set, that's definitely a villain thing to do, even though these are hero cards. Inhuman Mastery. That is his ultimate card. 4 combat, and each other player reveals one of those gray types of heroes, or chooses a henchman villain from their victory pile. You defeat all of those henchmen for free. If you've played one of these, I think, Inhuman symbol cards already, you get +1 combat for each henchman you defeated this turn. Okay, now I remember. So these are the Black Bolt cards. That's the Illuminati symbol, and the other symbol is the Cabal symbol. Anyways, Destructive Whisper, these are Black Bolt cards. He gets +1 combat if you reveal if you reveal 4 cards with no rule stack. So that's what all of his cards have to do with, cards that have nothing on them, which I think is really, really interesting. And in fact, he has a card like that. This is also a dual card in more ways than one. I don't know if I've already showed you something like this, but I'll show you now. This is one of several cards in this set that has 2 different of these ability or these skill symbols in addition to their affiliation symbol. So he has a total of 3 symbols up here on the top. There's quite a few cards in this set that are like that, and he gives you both of these types, recruit and combat, but no rules text, which works really well with his other cards. Just like this one gets 4 combat, but you choose a card you played this turn that has no rules text, and you get its recruit and combat again. And then finally, his ultimate card, for each card with no rules text you played this turn, draw a card. Black Panther is here as well. This one gets you +1 combat for each other multicolored card you played this turn. You may have been noticing that as well. Some of the cards have dual colors, which, I don't know, was that in other sets? For some reason, I don't recall seeing that. This one gives you, whenever you defeat a villain in the rooftops or streets this turn, you may KO one of your cards or a card from your discard pile. And then his ultimate card, this one lets you gain 3 sidekicks, and if you've played an Illuminati card already, put them on top of your deck, which could be amazing. This one says, once per turn, if you made at least 8 recruit this turn, draw a card, and you get 2 recruit. This one gives you 2 recruit, and once per turn, if you made at least 6 recruit, you get another +2 combat. So you see she's all about meeting those thresholds of points. And this one says, once per turn, if you made at least 6 recruit this turn, you get +6 combat, which, again, really, really powerful. Captain Marvel is also amazingly powerful. There's nothing too complicated about her card. It's just about getting the most recruitment and combat that you possibly can. So this one gives you 2 recruit, and if you played this symbol for each other, I think that's the targeting or precision symbol that you played this turn, you get an additional recruit. And this one is the same thing, but it has to do with combat and playing the fist symbols. You get that much more combat. And her ultimate card says that if you play 2 of the fist symbols and 2 of the precision symbols, you gain an additional 6 combat, bringing you up to 11, which will kill a lot of mastermind tactics. One of the on-again, off-again X-Men magic has to do with sidekicks. So her lowest cost card gains you a sidekick, and if you've played one of the Sonic symbols, you gain another sidekick. She also has to do with teleport. Teleport, if you remember, was introduced in at least one of the other sets. That means that if you can either play that card right then and there, or you can stow it off to the side and draw it at the end of your turn. In this case, if you choose to play it, for each sidekick you play this turn, you get an additional +1 combat. And her ultimate card has teleport, and you choose a villain or mastermind in your victory pile and gain combat equal to its victory point cost, or victory point value. Then you have Apocalyptic Kitty Pryde, I think from the X-Men Age of Apocalypse storyline. You may put a hero from the headquarters on the bottom of the hero deck. The hero that replaces it, you can purchase for 1 less if you so desire at that point. This one gives her an additional +1 combat for each of these skilled heroes that are in the HQ. And then you have Untouchable, her ultimate card, which is that whenever any player defeats a villain or mastermind with a fight effect, you can discard this card to ignore that and then draw 3 cards, or just get 5 recruit. Either one is good. And my favorite quote-unquote hero from this set, this is Thanos. And Thanos is funny because all of his things are about killing bystanders. Of course, why wouldn't it be? For every Cabal symbol, if you played a Cabal symbol, you KO a bystander from the bystander deck, and then for every 3 that are KO'd, every 3 bystanders that are KO'd, you get an additional +1 recruit. This one, he has teleport, and you can KO a bystander from your victory pile. If you do, to get an additional +2 combat and utter annihilation, his ultimate card. My favorite card, potentially, in the entire set. KO 6 bystanders from the bystander deck, then defeat any villain or mastermind whose combat is less than the number of bystanders in the KO pile. That is amazing. Let's go ahead and take a look at the schemes. All right, like most schemes in this game, except for in the base set, these are kind of complicated, so I'm just going to run through them. I will mention right off the bat, build an army of annihilation is a mistake. This should not be in this Secret Wars set, at least, because it has to do with Annihilation Henchmen, and those don't exist in this set. So I would hold on to it, though, because those might show up in a future Secret Wars set. You have a lot of cards, obviously, having to do with the storyline of the Secret Wars, like Fragmented Realities and Smash 2 Dimensions Together. These actually have to do with making like separate decks and separate piles for each player, and it's a whole complicated thing, but it's pretty interesting. So, for instance, Fragmented Realities has each player having their own, like, very abbreviated city that they fight villains in front of, and Smash 2 Dimensions Together has an alternate city right above the other one that only has 3 spaces. So those are pretty cool. Then you have a lot of cards that have to do, in fact, when we get to the villains, this will become even more apparent. There's a lot of things that manipulate your idea of what the masterminds and their tactics are. So Master of Tyrants says that you choose 3 other masterminds and shuffle their 12 tactics into the villain deck, and they essentially are villains at that point. And of course, as Twist comes out, things get worse and worse. And then Dark Alliance, essentially, you're going to have to fight more than one mastermind. So if the first twist comes out, you add a random second mastermind to the game with one mastermind tactic, and it just gets worse and worse. All right, so then, of course, schemes are only as good as their mastermind, and there are 4 in this set. You have Wasteland Hulk, which is the Old Man Logan storyline. His says that Mastermind Hulk gets +3 combat for each of his mastermind tactics among all players' victory piles. He always leads the Wasteland gang, which we'll get to, and there is that cross-dimensional Hulk rampage I was talking about. Every time a Master Strike comes out, you have to deal with that. You have to show a Hulk from your victory pile or hand, a Hulk card of some sort, including like Null, the Breaker of Worlds, or you're going to take a wound. All right, there are zombies in this set. Get over it. Zombie Green Goblin, for some reason, is the mastermind. He gets +1 combat for each hero in the KO pile that costs 7 or more. He always leads the Deadlands, which are the zombies. And his Master Strike is Rise of the Living Dead. Now, this is in addition to some other stuff. Now, Rise of the Living Dead, A lot of cards in this set have that, all the zombie cards and one of the Henchmen sets. That means that when a card that says Rise of the Living Dead comes out, the players immediately look at the top card of their victory pile, and if that card has Rise of the Living Dead on it, it comes into the city, which can be very, very annoying. Now, in addition, Zombie Green Lantern says that after that, you KO each hero in the headquarters that costs 7 or more, and then each player discards a card for each hero in the KO pile that costs 7 or more. So this guy targets your highest cost, best cards. Then you have Nimrod, the Super Sentinel, who I kind of think is the easiest one in this set. I'm not entirely sure, because I've played every Mastermind, but I haven't played all of them more than once, so I'm not sure, but he seems pretty easy. You can't fight Nimrod unless you made at least 6 recruit this turn, which means essentially you have to have 6 recruit and 6 combat. He always leads the Sentinel territories, and his Master Strike says that each player that doesn't reveal one of these chip heroes either ditches all of their recruit cards or all of their combat cards from their hand, which can be pretty debilitating. Then you have Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen. Hers is pretty funky because every time that, bystanders captured by her, which she will be doing, are essentially shields for her. You have to fight them as if they were henchmen that she keeps up next to her for 2 combat each, and you cannot fight her until all those henchmen are gone. Every time a Master Strike comes out, she captures 4 bystanders, I believe, and then if she had already had henchmen left over from before, everybody gets a wound as well. So she can be really, really tough. Now, let's talk about an alternate game mode. Alright, so in Secret Wars, it is now possible to play as the Mastermind. You can make Legendary into a 1 versus all game. Now, the vast majority of the game plays the same, because even as a Mastermind player, you still have a starting deck, you still buy cards from the HQ if you want to, or the lair, depending on what mat you're using. You can still fight villains in the city in order to keep the heroes from getting special effects from them. All of these things are mostly the same. It's just that you set up the game only for the heroic players and not yourself when you're figuring out how much stuff to include in the decks. But the big difference is that you as a Mastermind have access to a deck of cards the other players don't, called the Ambition deck. And there's, I think, 30 cards in the Ambition deck. What you're going to do is you're going to shuffle them up, and you're always going to start off with Pure Evil in play. And then on every one of your turns, you're going to add another card into a lineup of cards until you have a maximum of 4. And these are essentially cards that only you can purchase with combat power. When you purchase most of them, they go away, but Pure Evil will always stay in your lineup. And these will do something bad to the heroes, obviously. Pure Evil, you buy it for 5, and you get to play the top card from the villain deck. And then, of course, like I said, it stays there. Tide of Destruction, you can play 2 cards from the villain deck, and it costs you 8. Secret Plans essentially has a lot of text. What it says is that this card goes into the city as a scheme twist if that villain that it's attached to escapes. Infiltrate Shield, you get to put formerly KO'd agents, 0-cost cards, back into players' decks, into their discard pile, which can be very frustrating. Ruthless Strike, this card becomes a Master Strike that takes effect immediately. And Painful Choice, this one says that you either choose, much like one of Nimrod's Master Strike attacks, each other player chooses recruit icons or combat icons and discards all cards that have that thing. So it's just an alternate way to play the game. There is no balance that I noticed, so this just makes it really, really, really difficult for the heroes if you choose to play that way. Now, finally, let's take a look at the rest of the villain cards. Okay, Henchmen first. You have the Ghost Racers. They have the Rise of the Living Dead ability. If you fight them, you have to discard a Sonic hero or KO one of your heroes that has a combat icon. You have the Thor Core. This is an example of a card that if you defeat it, you actually acquire it into your deck. At that point, it'll be giving you 2 recruit, and if you play the Fist and a Precision icon, you get another recruit. The Modocs, if you choose to fight them, you KO a hero from your discard pile or the HQ, and if it has a recruit icon, you get +1 recruit. Here are the villain deck. These are essentially the ultimate heroes as a villain deck. So you have Ultimate Thor. Again, these are all characters that once you defeat them, you take them into your deck, so they're actually not worth victory points. If you fight Thor, he has if he escapes, he has cross-dimensional Thor Rampage. If you take him, he gives you 3 combat and can possibly give you more combat. You have Ultimate Captain Marvel, who will give you teleport when you acquire him. Ultimate Wasp, that just gives you combat. As you can tell, these characters don't have a lot of flashy powers. Cap is probably has the most power. He says you get +1 combat for each color of hero that you play. Then we go into the Inferno Limbo villains, which I know the least about. I must have missed this. These are really old ones, though. They're all just like basically bad X-Men. They're nothing special as far as their abilities, even. So we'll just kind of fly through them. Although the last one that I thought was pretty cool was Inferno Darkchild, who, if you fight her, you reveal the top card of your deck. You can KO it or teleport it, and each player teleports a random card from their hand if she escapes, which I think is kind of neat. Then you have the Wastelands, you have the Hulk gang, who all have the cross-dimensional Hulk rampage, which can be really, really brutal, and the same thing happens when you fight them and if they escape. You have Wasteland Kingpin, who can be bribed, of course, which means you can spend either recruit and or combat in order to fight him. If he escape, he ascends to become a new mastermind and gains a Master Strike ability, and he's not the only one that can do that. Wasteland Spider-Girl, again, these are from the alternate Old Man Logan storyline. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it costs 2 or less, you KO it. And then you have Wasteland Hawkeye Ambush. Wasteland Hawkeye captures a bystander. Choose one. If you fight him, each other player draws a card, or each other player discards a card. Then you have the Domain of Apocalypse, the X-Men Age of Apocalypse storyline. Apocalypse Weapon X. When you fight him, you KO one of your heroes, and he has cross-dimensional Wolverine Rampage. You have Apocalyptic Rogue. If you fight her, you reveal the top card of the hero deck. The player of your choice gains it. Escape, reveal the top card of the hero deck. Each player reveals their hand and discards a card of that class. When you fight Blink, you reveal the top card of your deck and choose to draw it or teleport it. And Magneto is another one. If you fight him, you get to gain an X-Men hero from the headquarters for free. But if he escapes, he becomes a new mastermind that you have to defeat in addition to the other masterminds. Then you have these Sentinel territories. These are the Days of Future Past X-Men. Again, nothing too flashy here, so we'll just kind of run through it. Rachel Summers alters the future, though. That's kind of interesting. During the rest of the player's turn, all villains and the mastermind get -1 if you choose to fight her, but if she escapes, they all get +1, which can be pretty frightening. Wolverine also alters the future. At the start of the next player's turn, you draw a card, and that player draws a card if you fight him, and he has his cross-dimensional rampage. Then you have the Kitty Pryde of Future Past. You get +1 recruit, and then Kitty Pryde also alters the future at the beginning of the next player's turn. That player gets +1 recruit. And finally, the zombies. They all have Rise of the Living Dead, and they're all pretty annoying in their own right. Actually, they're all pretty similar to their old ones. For instance, Zombie Venom, you have to use Sonic. You can't defeat him unless you've played Sonic Hero, for instance. Thanos says that he ascends to become a new mastermind if he escapes, just like Magneto and the Kingpin. All right, well, that was a ton of cards. Sorry for how long that took. Let's get to my final thoughts. All right, well, I'm not going to keep you in suspense here because there's not a lot of surprise. Again, if you've been keeping up with my channel, I love this set. I mean, really, I've enjoyed every single set that's come out for Legendary. I was a little bit critical of Villains because I thought it didn't go in the right direction, but even that was still solid. But this set is pure fan service. I always thought that Dark City would make it as one of my favorite expansions of all time, and it still would. And now it's a horse race between Secret Wars, again, Volume 1. There's going to be a Volume 2 of this. That's how much content they had. But it's a toss-up. I don't know if Dark City or this one is better. I think they have either exactly the same amount of cards or very close to it. And they're both phenomenal. Now, obviously, Secret Wars is a bit weird because there's all this crazy cross-dimensional stuff. And they really tried to break the game in some really interesting ways, and that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I think Dark City, well, that also introduced a lot of new stuff, the bribery mechanic, and I think maybe teleporting showed up in that one for the first time, but whatever. There was so much new stuff in there, it was a bit overwhelming as well, but I think it was more straightforward. It was more about like, hey, how come my favorite character wasn't in the set yet? Oh, now it is. Whereas in Secret Wars, you're retreading a lot of ground. I mean, they didn't just do Secret Wars only stuff in this set. They also took this up as the opportunity to put the Inhumans, or a couple of Inhumans at least, in the set. The Superior Iron Man, things like that. And then there's all the other cross-dimensional hopping. There's the Ultimate Spider-Man. So this is odd in that regard, but again, it's pure fan service. If there's an esoteric character that you've been wanting from some other alternate Marvel universe, they're probably going to be here. And that's the thing, too. There's so much content here. 14 heroes. 14 heroes. That's amazing. You know, if I was going to nitpick a little bit, I would say that I would have hoped that there would have been more villain groups and maybe even more masterminds. It's funny. I actually think, because people compare them all the time for no reason, only because of the theme, but I actually think that Legendary has the opposite problem of Sentinels of the Multiverse, because in Sentinels of the Multiverse, there's like way too many villains, and I'm like, I want more heroes. This is ridiculous. Every expansion only put out like 2 heroes and then like 3 or 4 villains. But Legendary is like tons of heroes, every single hero you could possibly imagine, and now we have villains as heroes, and only if not that many villain groups, henchmen groups, or masterminds, unless you have everything like I do. So I wish there was a little bit more there, but that's a nitpicky thing. I love having all this different content. There's some really interesting schemes that keep getting more and more complex, but I like the idea of them. I like that they're so thematic to the game and to the Secret Wars storyline, whether you're following it or not. Going back to the heroes, all the heroes are interesting in their own ways. Some of them are better than others. Some of them I love and will want to use all the time. Love Thanos. I'm not like in love with playing as villains, but his cards, killing the bystanders, as brutal as that sounds thematically, it's just so much fun in the game. I don't know what it is, but I love Thanos' cards. I like Magic's cards. I like Captain Marvel. So many, even Namor, who's probably my least favorite, or one of my least favorite Marvel characters ever. He's like submarines, or he's like underwater Spock. I have no interest in that character, but his cards in this set are really interesting. At least a couple of them are. So they all have their pluses and minuses, but overall, more great heroes to add into the mix. The villain groups are interesting. The masterminds are really cool. I love the Goblin Queen. It's really cool. Not every universe that's in the box is my cup of tea, and some I prefer to use over others. Like, I'm not into the zombies that much, but I do like the Rise of the Living Dead ability. I thought that was cool. I love the introduction of the sidekicks. That's an awesome card, and the only quibble I have with that is that I wish there were more, maybe different types of sidekicks, because so many cards reference getting sidekicks, using sidekicks, getting bonuses for sidekicks. Love that idea. Maybe just wish there was different ones. Like, drawing 2 cards is great. I'm not complaining about that. But maybe have something that gives you just specifically combat or recruitment, different types of sidekicks, not always just Bucky. In fact, at a certain point, we just started calling them Buckies. We don't even call them sidekicks anymore. And that's we're directly referencing the card. So, the last thing, though, I would want to talk about, or the last main thing at least, is the new Mastermind mode, which is where you can play as the Mastermind. Now, I tried this, and actually, I like it. I do like it because I like one versus all games. I did a whole top 10 list about it. So I dig it quite a bit, but the problem I have with it is that there's no counterbalance for the heroes. It is just straight up amping it up to nightmare mode for the heroes, and the Mastermind probably going to win, unless you're playing as a really easy Mastermind together with it, because it is just that much more difficult. I love the idea of it. I like getting the ambition cards, and it flows together really well. Other games, because you're still doing the same things. You're still doing the deck building like the other players, whereas in other games, the one versus all mode has felt tacked on, like in Darkest Night. But here it feels really good. It's just that it makes the game so much more difficult that I don't know that I'm going to be playing with it all the time. I mean, I think long gone are the days where Marvel Legendary was way too easy with the base set. Now, even the easiest of the Masterminds in some of these newer sets are still really tough compared to those. And with this mode, it makes it that much more so. But hey, if the other people you're playing with want a challenge, go for it, because it is pretty neat. Overall, this is a solid set. I can't say enough good things about it. So many cool new abilities, new heroes, so much content. One of the base sets, plus this or Dark City, or the next volume of this, I presume is going to be the same size, it'll keep you set for a very long time. You don't have to be a total junkie like me and get every single set. But just having this, you will be busy with Legendary for a very, very long time. That is Marvel Legendary Secret Wars Volume 1. Highly recommend it. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.